Hello and welcome to WGTC Radio, the official podcast of entertainment website. We got this covered. We are here for the second time in a row this week to talk about stuff.
I have a question.
Yes.
Who are you?
I'm Jonathan Lack.
And I'm Sean Chapman.
And we are here to mess up the intro.
Yeah.
I'm here. You got it right, apparently.
Yeah. I'm the only one who pays attention to this goddamn thing while recording it.
Yes, and I wanted to play for you guys as the opening music, because we're talking about Star Trek Into Darkness, the Star Trek theme from the Michael Giacchino scores to the new Star Trek movies, the big one, the Enterprise theme.
Yeah.
But I can't find it on the fucking soundtrack because Michael Giacchino titles every goddamn track on his scores after puns.
Yeah. My personal favorite on this one is Subprime Directive, because it's the part of the movie where the Enterprise is underwater at the beginning. So it's a sub, but it's, the prime directive.
Yeah, and we're about to spoil some stuff, so don't listen if you haven't seen the movie, blah, blah, blah. Then the track where Bruce Greenwood dies, Captain Pike, is meldmerized.
Yeah.
Love that.
Because the mind meld part, because he mind melds.
Yeah. When they go to Kronos, we've got the Kronos Quartet. We've got, Brigadoon. We've got Earthbound and Down, which is that's just a weird one. We've got Warp Core Values. My personal favorite, this one actually made me chuckle, but it's when Kirk dies, it's buying the space farm.
Yeah.
That's just so dumb it works. Kirk Enterprises. Okay. And then the only one that's titled normally is just Star Trek main theme, and that's not even the theme that he wrote. That's like the theme from the TV show.
Yeah, or this is what we played at the beginning, and apparently it's just build up.
Yeah.
Because we listened to a good 45 seconds, and it did not get anywhere. So we're just fucking, we'll play that one.
Yeah. So it's tough. And I have a large library of Michael Giacchino music just because I have all the scores from Lost, because it's a really good score.
And they're all like that. Yeah.
My personal, there's some great ones, like at the end of Season 1, when Boone dies, we've got Booneral. In Season 3, we've got Season 4, we've got the great track of Mice and Ben for the character Ben.
Because they're talking about it of Mice and Ben, because Ben quotes it, and his name is Ben, which sounds like men, but it's not.
He likes the Ben puns, because then in Season 5, we get the swinging pendulum. We've got... God, what are some of
I see there's one that says Dharma Disaster. Is there one that's called Dharma Chameleon? Because...
Probably.
That'd be great.
I mean, look how much long the Series 6 Season 6.
It
was
that was the season I did not watch. Apparently there was a lot of fucking music in that season.
They just released more of it, and I have it all combined. This was 2 separate soundtracks.
Oh,
because the finale got its own soundtrack. They did all the music from the finale, but yeah, it's the second to last song in the entire series, second to last song in all of Lost is called "Jumping Jack's Flash."
That's pretty great.
Yep, and then this might be a misspelling, but then there's one called Colshire. That's probably a pun of some sort instead of just closure spelled wrong. I bet it's Colshire for some reason.
Yeah. So, anyways, fuck you, Michael Giacchino. I mean, your music in Star Trek Into Darkness is pretty good, but man.
It's so weird.
Your soundtrack titles, you're kind of a dick. And at the very least, he could have the real title and then in parentheses his dumb joke, right?
Yeah, because it's just he's a great composer.
Yeah,
but it's kind of tough to find which pieces of music you want when it's of Mice and Ben. I love that one.
Yeah,
I don't know. Anyway, we have talked for too long about weird soundtrack titles. We are on this podcast talking about Star Trek Into Darkness. We did 2 podcasts this week. Yesterday we talked about Doctor Who. The series finale for Series 7. And today we're talking about this week's big movie release, Star Trek Into Darkness. Obviously, I like Star Trek. You like Star Trek.
Yep.
The listeners like Star Trek. So let's talk some Star Trek.
Maybe they hate Star Trek. We don't know. Maybe they want to fucking kill anybody talking about Star Trek right now, and we're putting our lives at serious risk.
Well, that's what happens when you podcast, Sean. It's a dangerous business.
That's true.
Yep.
And, I guess somebody's got to do it. I'm not sure that's true. I was going to say that, but then I realized no. Nobody really does have to do
Humanity was fine before podcasts.
Were we? Think of all the shit humanity did before their podcasts, like the fucking Holocaust, and all the fucking the Crusade, the Children's Crusade. Think of the Black Plague probably happened because people weren't podcasting about it, right? If people were podcasting, they'd have been stay the fuck away from people with big black pustules on their skin. Just don't touch them. Stay away. Think of how fucking great it would have been if podcasting had been there from the very beginning.
This is very true.
Yeah.
Very true.
We're part of a great cause, my friend.
All right. So if you've ever listened to one of our episodes where we talk about a movie before, you know the drill. We're just going to break this sucker down. It'll probably be pretty long.
Yeah.
Make sure you've seen the movie. We already spoiled some of it for you.
So.
Benedict Cumberbatch is Khan,
Khan! Sorry.
Yeah.
I may have jumped the gun on that one.
All right. So let's talk Star Trek Into Darkness.
Star Trek Into Darkness.
Do we just want to get all the jokes about the title out of our system up front?
I feel like we've just joked about the title so much that we just have to... We're just going to say it here, and this is the only time we're going to mention it. It is a dumb title.
Yes.
That's it.
It is the worst thing about this movie, right?
No. There's one thing that I would say is worse about this movie.
Yeah, you're probably right. But yes.
Yeah, but it is a very shitty title. The reasoning behind the title is dumb. They could have just called it Star Trek 2, and I would have been fine. I get that there was a Star Trek 2 before. Whatever.
Yeah.
At least you could have slapped a motherfucking colon in there. Apparently that's what everybody thinks is the worst thing about Star Trek. That's what keeps people away from Star Trek is the goddamn colons. But
not the Ferengi or something.
Yeah.
All right, so Star Trek Into Darkness. Sean, what did you think about Star Trek?
Into Darkness?
Yes.
I really liked it.
Okay.
I thought it was a really, really fun movie. I think it definitely has some problems that we'll get into. I think the biggest flaw, outside of just there's one really, really dumb thing that is the worst than the title, but the only real major flaw of the movie, I think, is that there's some really clunky plot structuring stuff that is all really boiled down to one minute exposition dump slap in the middle of the movie. That's just that you can definitely nitpick a lot of that stuff, and it is very nitpickable, but it is also a sort of... I felt like the movie it has a lot of action, and it's very character-focused, so the clunky plot stuff I was very easily able to forgive in that situation, so I ended up really liking it.
Yeah, I like it too. I don't like it nearly as much as the 2009 film, which I really loved.
I like it more. I mean, I haven't seen the 2009 film since I saw it in the theater, but I remember liking the movie and not loving it, and I definitely... I like this movie more than that one.
Okay.
So now.
So, interesting split there.
Yeah.
But for me, this is... I like Star Trek Into Darkness. I've got a lot of problems with it. Basically, it just boils down to... I said this in my review that's up on We Got This Covered, and I watched the movie again yesterday, and it was reinforced for me. I just think, to me, there's a clear split where I don't like a lot of the story stuff. I think it's really clunky. I think there's a lot of plot holes, and I think it's just kind of messy in that regard, and messier than it needs to be. But the character stuff is all really damn good. And clearly they have, this is the Damon Lindelof split, where we've got, great character work, kind of questionable plotting, and in the middle, it's still very entertaining, it's funny, it's got a good sense of pace, great action and effects and stuff, good energy. So overall, I like it, and it's definitely, we both recommend it.
Yeah, without a doubt.
It's a lot of fun, and I think I think it continues what they're trying to do with this whole reboot series, which is that it appeals mostly to Star Trek fans like me who are really into the series, but obviously also casual people who just don't have any interest in Star Trek can enjoy it, I think.
Yeah.
So, I don't think you need to have seen Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan.
Certainly not. Yeah. Not you will probably like this movie better if you haven't seen Wrath of Khan, honestly, because it will eliminate... If I had never seen The Wrath of Khan, that would immediately eliminate my biggest problem with this movie. I think that moment would still be awkward, but it wouldn't be nearly as awkward if I had no knowledge of Wrath of Khan.
But even then, I think they do play with the iconography of the series effectively.
Yeah, if you have seen Wrath of Khan,
there are moments
you get other stuff out of the movie, certainly. Yes. But you don't need to have seen it anyway.
And I think that's good, although I think it's kind of funny that it feels like everyone who works on these movies, that is the only piece of Star Trek they have ever seen. Because it's that's whatever they borrow from the original series, that's the only thing they do it from. Star Trek 09 had a bunch of stuff from Khan, like the test, what's it called?
Kobayashi Maru.
Yeah, had Kobayashi Maru. So and some other little things here and there where they would reference that, and I'm not saying that as a criticism, because
if there's one Star Trek thing to watch, it is Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan.
Yes, but
we did a whole podcast on that, so
yeah. So that was last week.
Yes,
it's a good movie. So this is where I want to open it up. Is you said last week that we shouldn't have watched Wrath of Khan in such close proximity. Was that a problem for you?
I actually I now disagree with that. I feel that honestly, watching it so close to this. It particularly, we'll get more in depth in this scene, but they do the inversion of the Spock death scene near the end of the movie, where instead it's Kirk dying. And I think having seen Star Trek II, so close to it and understanding the thematic material of Star Trek II, it made that scene so much more interesting in how they inverted it, and it highlighted the differences of these versions of these characters and how young they are. It made that scene, I think, a lot more compelling, whereas if I had not watched Star Trek II right before watching this, that scene might have made me a little, like, kind of angry at them sort of redoing this, like, one of my favorite scenes in all of cinema. Like, certainly one of my favorite death scenes of all time is that the Spock death scene, and if I hadn't had that proximity to, like, really, like, having the thematic material on mind, I think that would have made me a little angry at the movie, and having it, like, right there is like, okay, what they're doing here is actually really interesting.
I completely agree. I think it couldn't, even if it weren't Wrath of Khan, watching some of the original series stuff before seeing this helps, because just knowing, I think this series, these reboot films really understand, especially Kirk and Spock as characters, and that Chris Pine and Zachary Quinto are doing their own thing with these characters, but they still feel like the core of these characters are the same.
Yeah.
And that we are seeing them at earlier points in their lives, and I think it's really interesting to take these characters and knowing who they will become and where they will go and what situations they will be in, and contrasting it to where they are now. That's what this movie is all about thematically, and it works really, really well. And I think that there are some things that annoy me as a Star Trek fan in this movie on some of the plot and technical side, but character-wise, they've got that down pat and really satisfying.
Yeah, without a doubt.
So where do you want to start with this one? I don't feel like we need to go through the whole plot of the movie.
Probably not. I mean, it's like the plot of the movie is very hazy to me anyways in a lot of plots, in a lot of parts, but
I'll start with a complaint.
Okay, here we go. This is your, like we said on the Doctor Who podcast, where when we were talking about the last episode of Doctor Who, you were a lot more positive on it, and I was a lot more negative on it. Our roles are now flipped with this one.
Yes.
So
because I'm a much bigger Star Trek fan, Sean is not.
Yeah, like I've seen a lot of Star Trek, but I don't have a huge amount of affection for the series as a whole. So
yeah. And I definitely do. And anyway, I guess I'll just pose this to you first, though. Like the opening pre-credit scene where they're on the planet and they're they're doing the ice bomb thing. What did you think of that scene?
It was the opening scene of an action movie where they're doing something that has nothing to do with most of the movie. And it's like, I would like to know why the fuck and what situation prompted Kirk to steal this tribal civilization's most prized religious possession.
A second time through, I think they say he's doing it to distract them, so Spock can the volcano, which doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense anyways.
That is the explanation provided.
Okay, because the way they throw you just like right into that, and it was at first it was like, why the fuck did you, Kirk? What are you?
Yeah.
Did you just become like? I mean, you've kind of you were kind of a dick in the last movie, but did you just become like the most insufferable asshole, just taking religious artifacts from primitive civilizations that have no idea who you are or where you could possibly come from? Like, fucking asshole.
Okay, so I like this scene too. It's okay. It's not a great opening or anything, but it's fun. It's certainly not like Star Trek 09. One of the best scenes is the first scene where George Kirk saves the Enterprise and dies. Yeah. And this is obviously they couldn't do anything like that this time, so this works. But I have a problem with it.
Okay, I have some problems with it too.
My problem more than anything else is that what this scene is effectively doing functionally in the story is it's setting up a dilemma between Kirk and Spock, and it's that Spock wants to stick to the Prime Directive. Kirk breaks it to go save him, and then Spock doesn't quite understand why Kirk's angry at him. Kirk doesn't understand why Spock doesn't get it, and that's kind of their argument, right?
Yeah.
The problem is, both of them are partially misquoting what the Prime Directive is, because Spock going into and doing the ice bomb thing at all and being complicit in that is the major break of the Prime Directive here. Everything else is secondary to that to a certain degree. As soon as you start interacting with a civilization like that, that's the problem. And if you go back to the original series,
that was like every single episode of the original series.
They never worry about. Well, for one, the Prime Directive is a next generation thing. That's not a major thing in the original series. So that's a little like I'm sure that was there in Starfleet, but that is not something.
I feel like because I've don't watch a lot of TNG, and I feel like I knew about the Prime Directive before.
The Prime Directive is there in the original series. I'm just saying it's not as it is not something they stick to that level that they do in the Next Generation, or that is a thing. Like half the episodes in the first season of Next Generation are about them trying to do something with the Prime Directive, including a case where if they had stuck to it, Wesley would have died, and I will forever hate Picard for not letting Wesley die. Wesley's a piece of shit.
Kirk is better than Picard.
He is, because Kirk would have let Wesley fucking die. God damn it!
No, I think this movie probably proves that. No, but
this Kirk isn't William Shatner yet. He's not hardened, man. He's
Like, fucking, yeah, Kirk we know and love would probably fucking kill Wesley, like, himself.
Yeah.
Because you're like, oh, you okay, if you're going to kill him, like, let me do it.
Anyway.
Set faces to kill, motherfucker.
Anyway, what bothers me about this scene is that Spock is super on Kirk's ass about, like, don't come rescue me, that's a break with the Prime Directive, just let me die, when what he is doing is also a break with the Prime Directive, and then later, it's an internal logic issue in the film, because then, after the pre-credits sequence, we get to Bruce Greenwood's character, Captain Pike, berating Kirk for this, and Pike says correctly that anything you do where you're interacting, like putting the ice bomb in the volcano and all this stuff, that's all the breaking of the Prime Directive. And then even after that, Spock still like asserts that he's right, and their argument keeps going on. And so it's just an inconsistency that bothers me.
I mean, but this is something you brought this up before we started this podcast talking about the movie, and I feel like I was sort of like arguing against that. In that because what happens is that, I mean, you don't actually see this because the movie starts like in medias res in this scene, but presumably Kirk has ordered Spock to go do this. And it's not like Spock would have just decided to do that on his own. So this is Kirk's fault. Like, you know...
Yeah, but Spock never argues with the choice, clearly. He wants to do it. He's doing it.
You can't just assume that. Like, you can't just assume that Spock was like... Then Kirk was like, go do that. And Spock was like, yeah, sure, fuck
it. But here's the thing,
Spock is doing it, but Kirk obviously would have had to order him to do it.
That's too simple, because Spock is also talking about the eradication of the species, and that's obviously something that we know from the last movie. He lost his own species, so it seems like they're trying to create some sort of personal connection here, that he wants to do this because he doesn't want to see another species eradicated.
And maybe that is true, but then he also does not want... You know, because what happens is, like, the Enterprise rises up from the ocean, the primitive civilization sees it, and then they start, like, scratching it on the ground and being like, holy shit, there are fucking aliens, oh my god. Like, that is a clear, wholly, like, breaking the Prime Directive thing that has nothing to do with trying to save a civilization, that has no positive effect from it whatsoever, from Spock's perspective, because Spock doesn't think that he needs to be saved. So... Like, I don't have a problem with that, because then also the consequences from the action is that like Kirk is the one that ultimately broke the Prime Directive because he's the one who gave the orders. Spock was not going to defy orders. It is the commander's responsibility. And then the other big thing is that Kirk never filed the report in the first place. Spock did it, and that's even worse.
Well, yes.
That's why Kirk gets shit on, is because everything is his fault.
Yes, and it is. And overall, I like what this scene does for the movie because it sets up that, yes, giving young Kirk this command was a bad idea because he's shitty at his job so far. He's just not the man he's destined to be yet because he's much, much younger and much cockier. And I like all that. It's just this was an inconsistency to me that bothered me because I just the way that scene is played, Spock does not necessarily have the moral high ground here. And then there's also just technical inconsistencies.
I don't think Spock is like conscious of like having moral high ground. Like that's just not his attitude. I don't know. Like it doesn't feel like he thinks he has the moral high ground. He's just doing things as the regulations demand he do, and that's it because he's Spock. Like there's no like moral high ground. Him like morally debating other than him like recommending Kirk don't like violate the Prime Directive because that's what the fucking rule is.
Okay,
Kirk's I'm going to violate the Prime Directive multiple times.
Okay, well, and I mean, he does literally break out the phrase morality later in the film. He's talking about, he's saying what you're doing, Kirk, is immoral when he tells him.
Yeah, but he's doing that in response to Kirk having brought up morality in the first place. Like Spock is not the one bringing up morality all the time.
Okay,
so
it's fine. It's not.
I think it is totally consistent.
Okay, I don't think it's consistent in the slightest, but it's fine. It doesn't make sense, but that's fine.
What is inconsistent in that whole sequence is that so because they have the Enterprise underwater.
Why can't they just beam him out?
Regardless of that, the transporter beams, whatever.
They have absolutely no grasp on that technology.
Yeah, I don't feel like Star Trek has ever had I'm not deep into post-original series stuff, but it always feels like Star Trek is like the transporters work when it's convenient for them to work, and they don't work when it would break the story if they did. That's what it's always felt like to me.
It's never quite as big an issue as it is in these two movies with the J.J. Abrams thing, where that is the transporters never work the way they're supposed to work, and it's always like, fuck, this isn't working. They always have to be a core of the action scene, and I was fine with it in the 2009 film. I think they overuse it as a plot device a little here, but
yeah, but for me, what was really dumb because they bring it up is that they're like, why can't we just fly the ship over to the fucking into the volcano or whatever? It's like, it's a starship, Captain. It's like you can't take hot magma. It's like, you're a fucking starship! What do you mean you can't take... You fly around stars that spew fucking hot, condensed hydrogen plasma! That's a hell of a lot fucking harder than some molten rocks, you know? Like, it was just like... You're a fucking... And he was also complaining about, it's like, we've been under the water for like 3 days, cotton, the salt water's rusting this... You're in a fucking spaceship. I think it can handle being in the ocean for a couple of days.
Well, here's my other question. How are they ever planning to get out without the natives seeing them, and how did they get in there without the natives seeing them?
The explanation to that is that it was cool to see the Enterprise come up out of the water. But yeah, like, logically, that whole sequence makes no sense. It was just like... The reason it's there is because it's cool to see the Enterprise come out of the water, and it's cool to have Spock be in the volcano.
Yes, I do like the suit he's in. It's a cool...
Yeah. Like, it's a fun scene, but like with a lot of this movie, like, if you really wanted to nitpick it, you can tear it apart logically. But, you know.
Yeah.
Like, that was the only part where I really felt kind of compelled to do it, because it's just like the ridiculousness of saying that a spaceship is not going to be able to handle a volcano. It's just like, fucking... Come on, you're in a space. If you can't handle a volcano, get the fuck off that spaceship, because you're going to be dead as soon as you collide with like little tiny rocks that are moving at like near speed of light.
Going through an atmosphere.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't know if this is ever like addressed in Star Trek specifically, but I don't think the Enterprise is even supposed to go in atmosphere. Spaceships usually.
No, I don't think
spaceship. Yeah,
I don't think we ever see that in another Star Trek property.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that like a spaceship like that would obviously not be designed to be in atmosphere. It was also kind of like in Star Trek 09. It was really dumb that they were building the Enterprise on Earth.
That was a big controversy with fans.
Why the fuck are you doing it? Like, of course you. Why? Like, the big thing is, like, the reason why space travel sucks is because it takes so much energy to get something out of the atmosphere. If you're just already in space, it's no fucking problem. Yeah. Like, a spaceship is not designed to fly through atmosphere if it's like that, but...
Right.
Whatever.
Yeah.
You know? Like I said, if you wanted to bring real science into it, Star Trek is not sci-fi as far as I'm concerned, so not like real sci-fi.
Okay. So, in any case, after that scene... The opening scene, that's when we first meet Benedict Cumberbatch's character. He's helping Mickey from Doctor Who out.
Yeah. Mickey!
Yep. So, that's nice to see Mickey from Doctor Who in a part where he has, like, one line.
Yeah.
And then blows up. What was that little ring thing he had put in water that somehow obliterated an entire building?
Yeah, it was, like, just explosive. Like, I can buy that.
Okay.
It's explosive that activates a chemical reaction when it hits water. Like... Something like that could very easily exist.
I'm not saying it couldn't. I'm just asking.
That's what it was.
Okay.
It was an explosive that activated from the chemical reaction when it hit water.
Okay, cool. So
he's really lucky it didn't rain.
Yes. So Khan apparently has the secret to immortality, and he gives the little girl his blood.
Khan? What do you mean, John Harrison?
Yes, John Harrison has the secret to immortality, so he saves this guy's little girl, and then the guy has to go blow up the building, and then... We have here's a clunky part of the movie to me is that on the other side of the plot that's going on here is we have Pike reprimanding Kirk, and again all the character stuff here is great. Bruce Greenwood is awesome in this movie. He was awesome in the last movie. I'm sad he's gone, but his death obviously matters here. But this is his death also, and this whole section of the movie also shows to me the clear split between plot and character stuff, which is that having Kirk being demoted back to Starfleet, but then he's upmoted to commander/first officer for Pike, and then Pike has to die at that point so Kirk can be captain and we can have the movie happen. So it feels like there's something so perfunctory about Pike's death because it just has to happen because of how they've set it up. But emotionally it works very well because it has to happen for Kirk to have this desire.
I don't have any problem with that. I mean, I thought it did feel a little weird of like, because it's literally like back-to-back scenes of him being like, Kirk, I'm sending you back to the academy. And then you cut to John Harrison for a bit. And you cut back, he's like, you're my first officer. Kirk's like, well, shit, okay.
It's just a lot of that. And then it's also, I mean, they don't mention this. Pike's getting a fucking demotion if he's captain of the Enterprise again. And I don't quite know how he would be fit for duty because he's got, like, a bad leg from the last movie. He still has to walk with a cane. And
you can be captain of a starship. You don't need to be, like, this action hero dude.
No, but I feel like
sit in a chair and say warp 5, okay, so he'd be captain. And he probably would have been demoted because he's kind of the reason why this little shit Kirk was in the captain's chair in the first place. So he probably got a little bit of the force from Admiral RoboCop. So
all right, so let's see. So Pike dies, And here's another plot thing that
You just skipped right to Pike dying. Holy shit.
Well, what happens in the middle?
They convene, I guess, like...
And this is another really silly moment that Kirk is the one who has to figure out that maybe we shouldn't convene in the room where the Starfleet officer who just bombed the shit out of our archive would know where we are. Like, Kirk figures that out, and immediately they get shot down.
It's an obvious, like, Kirk is the one who kind of, like, comes up with it. But, like, that seems like something that would happen is that you cause, like... you cause a distraction to cause these people to, like, all these people to convene in one area and then attack that place. Like, that is totally plausible. Like,
But considering the enemy is a Starfleet officer with inside knowledge, and especially
maybe they should have been a little smarter about it, but top brass is not always brilliant.
But we also know Admiral RoboCop knows what Khan is, knows who John Harrison is, knows how powerful.
And we also know that Admiral RoboCop is not necessarily the brightest dude in the world because he's the one who woke up Khan in the John Harrison in the first.
I don't think he does a single smart thing in this whole movie.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's totally consistent. That's what I'm saying. I don't see what you have a problem with.
I guess you're right.
Totally something that would happen. He got fooled by John Harrison.
Fooled? I don't know. He's just retarded. He's fucking the stupidest admiral in the history of the universe.
Don't you say that about Admiral RoboCop?
I don't like Peter Weller in this movie, but we'll talk about that later.
A lot.
All right, so Pike dies. Spock mind melds with him, which is kind of morbid, but it's got some good results later.
Yeah.
Kirk's really sad, and then Scotty finds out that Khan transported all the way. Yeah, John Harrison transported all the way to Kronos. They couldn't teleport Spock out of the volcano, but he can teleport across the galaxy. And there is an explanation for that. It's just the other thing that's inconsistent. So anyway, transwarp beaming, yay. And they decide they're going to go to Kronos, and they have these missiles guided on. And again, not really worth talking about the plot of all this, because it's all kind of clunky with, like, you're going to take 76 missiles, even though I'm ordering you to shoot one, and, like, they're really volatile, and Kirk is kind of makes some bad decisions, but they're in character with the whole, he wants revenge, and Scotty quits, and, But Scotty's got a good role in this movie.
Yeah, he does. Yeah.
I like Scotty. Simon Pegg's just a good actor.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a good Scottish accent. Or a fun... I don't know if there's any good accents, but it's like for that. But it's fun and cheesy in the way it's supposed to be. So anyway, so the mission starts, and to me, like, I guess if we're talking about the movie so far, I think the first act is a lot of fun to me, just with getting into, like, setting up the character dilemmas for Kirk and Spock and stuff. It's the second act that I think is a little. It's like that's the clunky part of the movie to me, where they have to go down to Kronos, and they come back up, and that's when Khan gives the big exposition
John
dump.
Harrison.
Well, yeah, John Harrison, and it's just kind of the back and forth between who's the bad guy and who isn't, and some of the investigation stuff where kind of the character stuff gets put on the back burner for a little while to let the plot come into its own. That part's a little clunky to me in the second act, but it works.
I thought it was fine. Like, it didn't like, other than the big fat exposition dump that's just like, half this stuff doesn't really, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Other than that, I thought, like, this whole part was fine. Like, you get some good action scenes with, like, the John Harrison with his, like, big fucking, like, his pistol, and then he's just got this huge cannon. I have no idea where the fuck he got that thing from.
He probably made it himself.
Klingons. How would you make a fusion reactor laser?
He was making weapons. That's his fucking job with he could have just stolen it when he left.
No,
he's developing weapons. He built those fucking missiles.
I thought you meant, like, on Kronos, like, from,
he didn't build it on Kronos, but,
But he clearly didn't have it when he teleported there.
He could have teleported there before and, like, put stuff there.
He couldn't have teleported there in the first place, because you couldn't just, like, it would have... How far away is Kronos from Earth?
Really far.
Okay, so it would have taken him hundreds of years, most likely, to teleport, because when you teleport, you travel at light speed, because that's what that is. Near light speed, actually.
You're doing warp. It's transwarp beaming. You're just traveling at warp speed through space.
And so they're turning him into minor particles and then bending space across all that area.
That is technically the explanation, yes. Dude,
they got fucking holy shit! Why don't they just warp apart Kronos and just kill all the... If you can just do that, like, you should be able to fuck that planet up!
Well, do you remember
from Earth?
In Star Trek 09, when they're on the planet where Kirk meets Spock Prime, then that's when they meet Scotty, and it's Scotty's equation for transwarp beaming that allows them to get back onto the Enterprise. It's the same principle here. It's super implausible because it would not be instantaneous. That, as you said, even at warp, that would take a significant amount of time. Kronos is not close to Earth, no.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Like I said, if you wanted to pick it apart,
yeah,
not hard to do.
No. Let's just talk about, I don't know, going through the story for this movie doesn't really help, I think. So I don't know, I mean, we find out John Harrison is Khan. Because yes. And
am Khan.
I love the moment when he does that because it's a weird way they kind of play that moment where he's like, I am Khan. And then he has this little smile like, that's right, you guys know who I am. But it means nothing to anyone in the movie. Yeah. It's just there for the audience. And he has this like musical sting. It's kind of awkward, but...
Yeah, it would be like a scene if you had not seen Wrath of Khan, you'd be like, okay, so what?
Yes. Well, I like both times
you have a different name than what I thought your name was. Big fucking deal.
Although I liked that in both times I saw the movie, somehow people in the theater had not figured out who he was yet, and so like half the audience went like, oh.
Like, I mean, I have to say, it's like, it seemed like kind of what they were doing. I was like, okay, he's probably Khan, like, in that action scene, it's like, that's probably what they're doing. But I wasn't entirely sure if they were going to go all the way and name him Khan. So it was like, until, like, they were about to do it, it was like, okay, this is what they're doing.
I figured he was Khan in the action scene with the Klingons, and then I was like 100% sure once they opened up the missile pod and there was a guy in it.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's space feed. But I like that. I mean, let's talk about these bigger issues in the movie, rather than going through the story here. Like, they did Khan. Are you happy with how they did Khan?
Yeah, actually, I really am. I think we both were sort of didn't think that they were probably going to do Khan because it seemed like a weird decision to do. But like when we've talked about it, I've always said that if like I hope what they do, and this is what they did with Khan, is just basically go back to the idea of who Khan is, which is a genetically modified sort of Superman dude who fought in the eugenics wars and kind of became like this crazy Hitler type of like dictator guy, and like go back to that and then do something with it. Because while Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan is a fucking amazing movie, like the only reason Khan is a eugenic Superman is because he was a eugenic Superman in Space Seed. It has nothing to do with the movie at all.
Yeah, and they play with that a little bit in the Space Seed episode, but only as much as the technology allowed at the time.
So like going back to that idea of the eugenics wars and that kind of aspect of it, it's like, okay, like because he doesn't even need, like, he doesn't need to be named Khan in this movie. Like, that's just sort of a fan servicey kind of, reboot thing, whatever. But, like, he is a completely different, I mean, he has similarities to Khan, but he's a very different kind of character. He has a very different role in the movie than Khan did in Star Trek II, and even in Space Seed. Like, it's got more to do with Space Seed than it does Wrath of Khan, but...
And I think that's the way to go, because, I agree, I don't think he needed to be named Khan, and I wonder if people would be looking, if Benedict Cumberbatch would be even more talked about if he got to create an original villain, but it's okay. For all intents and purposes, he got to do his own thing here.
Yeah.
They went in a different direction, and what I liked is they explored areas of Khan we had not seen before, and it felt like it feels like a valuable part of the fabric of the movie, and they even did it in such a way where the canon is still respected. It's not like he was still on the Botany Bay, they still found him out in space. It just happened in a different way because of the events of the 2009 movie. Mm-hmm. That was what I was most impressed about, is that the plot, they were able to find an explanation for Khan being there that made sense with what we know about the history.
Yeah.
So, that was fun. Don't know why he's British now. I
don't know why he was Spanish in the first place. Yes. Khan Noonien Singh, not a fucking Mexican name, It's not... Yeah, not Latino. So
So he's British now, but that's all good.
There are a lot of people who it seems weird that they're British in this movie. But.
Yes, but Benedict Cumberbatch being British is always awesome because he's got a great voice.
British,
and let's talk about Benedict Cumberbatch. He is really fucking good in this movie.
Holy shit!
Yeah. I mean, obviously he does great with dialogue and his lines because he's just his voice is awesome, and that's what makes him so good on like Sherlock and stuff. Mm-hmm. But what impressed me so much about him here is his physicality.
Yeah,
like J.J. Abrams recognized something in Benedict Cumberbatch I don't think other people have used so far, which is that he kind of, when he moves and like how he fights in this movie and the way he looks with his height, but also him being very kind of skinny, he kind of has this snake-like quality to him, and they really emphasize that here with how he uses his eyes. And how he always looks like he's kind of, when he fights, he's kind of like he's coiled and then he strikes.
Yeah.
And it's very much like he's just very frightening to look at. And even though he's not, a physically imposing person in the traditional sense of the word.
Yeah.
He's not, Tom Hardy in Dark Knight Rises. But it really, like, the physicality, they really sell it in ways that seem truly kind of terrifying.
Yeah.
Like when he's going on the rampage on the bridge of the other ship, and he just breaks Dr. Kelmark's leg in half.
Yeah, jeez.
And he goes and just rips, RoboCop's head apart.
No, I don't think he rips it apart. I think he crushes it with his bare hands. Yes. I'm pretty sure that was implied in that scene.
Yeah. Actually, that's what I thought, too. Thomas, my brother, had a theory that he actually ripped his brainstem apart or something, and it was like... Don't know what he was talking about with that, but
I'm pretty sure
he just crushed it. That's what I thought too. Yeah. So crushes his head, Good sound design in the movie, very gross.
Yeah, especially like in that scene is really good. And then I always liked, in like the fight scenes with Khan, every time Khan lands a punch, like the thunderous just like thud from that is great. It's just like a really great punch sound effect of it really sells this. Oh yeah, you don't want to get punched by that guy.
Yeah,
that would probably suck.
Yes, and I think they just did a fun job using Khan in different contexts and building him to the point in the movie where he is just this unstoppable, terrifying villain.
Yeah.
Even though their ultimate solution of how they beat him is a little simple, but it's okay, it works. Mm-hmm. But I like that early on when we first meet him, it seems like they could be playing him in such a way where he becomes an ally.
It is because you're not, since he's used in such a different way than he is in like Wrath of Khan and stuff. Because this is the first time they've met him, and he's a very different kind of Khan. It puts the audience in an interesting position where you know that he has historically been a villain, but since they're sort of Kirk and him are working together, and Khan doesn't necessarily have a reason to betray Kirk in any way, you're left there thinking it's like, okay, like maybe Kirk and Khan can get together in this like reboot universe under these like the enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of way and take out Admiral RoboCop.
Yeah. And I'll admit, I would have been interested in seeing a direction where they could have done something with Khan where they decided to make him an ally or something. That would have been an interesting way to go. Mm-hmm. But I really like what they do where they just get fucked. And they get fucked so thoroughly by Khan in this movie where they're on the bridge with the other ship. Kirk has the correct idea to drop this guy.
Yeah.
But he doesn't know the extent of his power.
Yeah.
And then he gets up, breaks Karl Marx's leg in half, crushes Admiral RoboCop. And then he just...
beats the shit out of Kirk.
Yeah, beats the shit out of Kirk, and then gives Spock just annihilates Spock, logically.
Yeah.
When they're having the ship-to-ship confrontation, where it's just like, you have nothing on me. I will fucking destroy you.
Yeah.
It works.
Yeah, definitely. Benedict Cumberbatch is fucking great in this movie.
Yeah. And we get some fun... And even when they are allies, we get some fun stuff, like the space drop, where they're going, and... That was a little disappointing because they start with no sound in space and then they put sound in space.
Yeah, there is no sound in space. Goddammit.
Yeah, and we wouldn't even talk about it if they hadn't made us aware.
I would talk about it. Okay. I talk every single movie there is sound in space. I talk about it because that is not known.
But
you can have music. Music is fine. Not sound effects. There are no sound effects in space.
Yes, very true. Which is kind of funny because they shoot all the ships in this movie like in Firefly, where they do the thing where they have it out and then they zoom in.
Yeah.
So it makes me think about Firefly, which does not have sound in space. Mm-hmm. One of the trademarks of that show. I think that's kind of funny. But in any case, J.J. Abrams takes his inspiration from all sorts of sci-fi, just not Star Trek.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, we'll talk about that later. But so, all the stuff with Khan works really well. The story goes along. The thing that I dislike most about this movie is I think the actual villainous plot that gets Khan into the movie and all this stuff is fucking retarded. And the whole idea that and that exposition dump, as you say, Khan eventually just looks at Kirk for 3 minutes and tells the plot of the movie.
Yeah,
and the plot is really stupid. Where the reason Admiral Marcus has for waking up Khan makes a certain amount of sense.
Admiral RoboCop. I don't know what you're talking about.
Admiral RoboCop, the reason he wants to wake up Khan and get his help is because they're worried about the Klingons as a threat, and that makes sense, but some of the stuff that comes out of that, his unbelievably convoluted plan to have Kirk go and have the Enterprise destroyed and the Klingons start a war, and then, we'll just start a war for the fuck of it, because the Klingons are way more powerful than us, but whatever, let's just start a war for fun. And it's dumb, but...
Yeah.
Yeah, and then obviously, You would think that, I don't know why Admiral RoboCop decided to just piss off Khan, knowing the extent of his power, and then Khan decides to get retaliation. Couldn't Admiral RoboCop have just been here's your crew, Khan, don't, I'm not going to try to kill them, and then that's why Khan fights back, we find out in the big exposition dump. It's I
had the impression that Admiral RoboCop was sort of blackmailing Khan with the crew, and that was, the only way he could get Khan to work for him, was because because Admiral RoboCop had the crew, so then Khan had to smuggle them out by putting them in weapons, and that's how that all this started.
Yeah, so a little weird.
It's convoluted, but that part of the movie is not. It's just an excuse to have the villains there. Really, it's not.
Yeah,
it is clunky, but I don't feel like it. At least for me, it didn't particularly detract from my experience because the focus on the movie was so heavily on the character relationships between Kirk and Spock and how that developed.
And that works. But I want to keep on this for a minute. I mean, so you like Admiral RoboCop in the movie?
Yeah, I mean, he's a really over-the-top villain, but I'm fine with that. I'm fine with a really over-the-top cliche villain every once in a while.
It just doesn't even look like Peter Weller is trying to me in this movie. It is so phoned in. I
really disagree. Like, I don't think he turns in, like, an amazing performance, but I would never call it bad. Like, it's cliche and over-the-top, but Star Trek a lot of times is kind of cliche and over-the-top. Particularly over-the-top, so I'm fine with it.
Okay, I just think he's a boring villain. I don't understand his motivation.
And you liked Guy Pearce in Iron Man 3? Man.
I did.
I would say probably Peter Weller is about the level of Guy Pearce in Iron Man 3. My main problem with Guy Pearce in Iron Man 3 is that there was a promise of a more interesting villain, and in Star Trek Into Darkness, we actually have a more interesting other villain, which is Khan. And Peter Weller is there as a sort of Admiral RoboCop is there as a secondary villain.
It's just none of his motivations make sense to me. There's a lot of, I just think, really ham-fisted stuff with him, especially where, like, Kirk gives this really emotional plea, and then he does this stupid-ass line like, I was never going to let your crew live, Kirk. And I'm like, why?
Because they could tell everybody about Khan. Of course he's not going to let them live. Of course he's just going to kill them out in the middle of nowhere and make everyone think that the Klingons did it, because then he can also use that as an excuse to get everyone else behind the war against the Klingons.
Sure, I guess. Of course
he wouldn't let them live. Why would he ever let them live after they saw him know about Khan, know that he let Khan out, saw him attack their ship, he's clearly broken just like hundreds of Starfleet protocols, and they could have him arrested.
I would think
he wouldn't let them live.
I was thinking in the back of my mind, clearly he's got this fucking ship, they would have records on this, I don't know. It doesn't... Either way it goes, it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make a ton of sense, but I don't think it's as nonsensical as you think it is.
Okay,
it's like there is no way he was going to let them. Like realistically speaking, he would never let them live. Like the smart thing to do in that situation would be to kill everybody. There.
Okay, it's fine, whatever. I really, really strongly dislike Admiral RoboCop in this movie, and
I really strongly dislike you. If this is where you're drawing the line, where you're saying you really dislike Admiral RoboCop, that you really dislike Peter Weller in any fashion, no matter what. This is not okay.
No, we both talked about it in the Dark Knight Returns podcast that Peter Weller phoned the fuck in on that Dark Knight Returns movie. Yeah, we completely agreed on that.
He phoned it in. I still was happy that Peter Weller was there.
Okay. This is my biggest problem with the movie. I don't find that character interesting. I think that part of the movie is kind of a mess. I think it's my favorite part of it all is when Khan finally goes and says, "You should have let me sleep," and crushes his head.
I mean, that's awesome. Dead. Yeah,
it's great.
I agree.
It's awesome.
Yeah,
but, I really...
I'm not going to... it's probably the weakest part of the movie, but I don't think it's particularly terrible. Like, it's...
I'm not saying terrible, but I think that tonally, I think this part of the movie has issues, because I think Peter Weller is operating out of a different movie. It's a different kind of... He's pitching to a very different kind of tone, and it just doesn't feel like what the rest of this... Ignore the larger Star Trek universe. This movie, for the most part, the character relationships and the villains feel grounded in a way he does not, and I just don't think it fits.
I definitely don't feel that. I mean, I definitely think that his character doesn't necessarily tie into like the character relationships in the way that like Khan does. But he also very much feels like a secondary villain. Like he doesn't feel like a huge character. He's more a wall there to like an obstacle to force Kirk and Khan to be together and to give them a little objective in the second act of the movie.
I understand his function. I know that's his function.
Yeah, and I just think that's it. I don't think it's like. I don't think it takes away from the movie in any meaningful way. I still think
it could have been done better, that's all.
It could have been done better, but I don't think it was done terribly.
Okay.
I think it was fine.
Whatever. Let's see, what else was I going to say about this part? You talk for a while.
Let's see, so what else happened? So we have the whole sequence where they get on the ship.
I mean, I should say I like some action beats here. Yeah. Like, he's got that giant ship, and I like that it breaks them out of warp.
Yeah.
The mechanics of warp in this movie don't always make sense, but...
The mechanics of warp in Star Trek don't make sense. You never get the sense that anybody on the show understands that warp is that you're condensing space and, like, the realities of that situation. Except, why doesn't someone just fucking condense Kronos? Because you can just condense space.
Yeah.
That is a very significant technological power that you can condense space itself, but...
I just think it's a little weird in this movie that they depict warp entirely differently than they even did in the last movie. That's all. I just think that's a funny, like, you're right, Star Trek always does warp weird, but it's like, even within this two-movie canon, warp is, like, now it has at least behind a trail of pixie dust for some reason.
I don't remember, like, the most significant is, like, because they do the thing where, like, the ship stretches or whatever, which shouldn't it be that the ship did whatever. But, and then they have, like, it's actually this very Star Warsy, like, you are in this, like, shaft of blue, whatever. Uh-huh. And it's obviously that was, like, because there's no way to visually, like, or at least they couldn't come up with a cool way to visually represent another ship in warp catching up to your ship in warp.
Right.
Because it would be, that would actually look really funky because everything would be, like, stretching and stuff, but...
Yeah. I'm not necessarily complaining about this, I'm just saying, like, it's, it's a little wonky just because even if, you ignore the larger Star Trek canon, it's,
whatever. Like,
it's another thing where they're doing Star Wars and they're not doing Star Trek, and it's fine, but,
Yeah.
Yeah. J.J. Abrams clearly wants to make his Star Wars movie.
Yeah, he does.
So, let's see. What else do we want to talk about here? The actual ending, obviously, once Khan takes over, I mean, that's where the movie really gets really good to me, is once Khan has the other ship, and I think they start doing some great character stuff here, and it's really like the tension is really high, the Enterprise really takes a fucking beating.
Yeah.
One day I hope in this series the Enterprise gets to fight back, but we'll see, because both these movies have ended with the Enterprise just completely fucked.
Yeah.
That's how it goes, and, Kirk comes back to the ship, and Kirk winds up doing the thing, something similar to what Spock did.
Yeah, it's basically the same thing. They just made it a much bigger room than it was before. But yeah, he has to stop this radiation leak or whatever, and fix this broken thing. Yeah.
So let's talk about that scene, because this is their big recreating a moment from Wrath of Khan. And this is something, if you had told me that they would have done this before I saw the movie, I would have said that's a terrible fucking idea.
Yeah.
You just can't make that work. But they made it work really well, because not only you have this on the surface, the split between, now it's Kirk on the inside and Spock on the outside, that's kind of interesting. But it's really a character thing here. Where it's where they've come in this movie, and it's, the whole point of Into Darkness is pushing these characters towards the adults we know they're going to be.
Yeah.
And I think what's so interesting about that scene is that it lets both Kirk and Spock be completely, totally vulnerable as, not as kids, but, they're not the adult officers we know they're going to be. They don't know how to process death. They don't have the language for it. They're just completely confused by this. And at the same time, in this moment, this is where the ultimate sort of exchange in philosophy comes between the two of them, where Kirk finally understands where Spock is coming from on emotion, and Spock finally understands where Kirk is. And that feels so significant to me, and they play that moment so well, and then...
Yeah, and then fucking Spock, Kirk has apparently died, and Spock looks up with anger and goes, Khan!
Except it's a longer yell than that.
And they kind of, cut it off at the end, too, with a cut in a weird, where it kind of sounds like he says, Khan! Like he's some sort of really pissed off crow. Ka motherfuckers. But yeah,
that's terrible.
That is the worst part of the whole movie to me, is just that yell of Khan is so unnecessary and just immediately drop kicks you out of the movie, because
it's an empty reference where the other references are not empty.
Yeah, their inversion of the Spock death scene is really clever and sort of highlights, it sort of brings Kirk's character development of him sort of being able to understand the actual responsibilities of a captain, what is sort of expected of you, and the reality of the situation of death and of people dying and people under your command dying and your affection for your crew. And so he sacrifices himself, and then it's Spock's culmination of him being able to see, this is death is this really emotional thing, and sometimes you can't just ignore it and turn that off. That I'm a half human, I have emotions, I have to process this in some way. And then they cap that with a reference to, a great scene from Wrath of Khan that is not the Spock death scene from Wrath of Khan. So, it being brought up there at all just feels out of place. Spock even doing that kind of feels out of place, because Khan's not directly responsible for Kirk's death. So it's immediately just channeling all his rage at Khan in that moment. It's not like he saw Khan break Kirk's neck, Yeah. It's Khan was the cause of Kirk's death, but in an indirect fashion. So him just being Khan feels really weird. Yeah. And then also, on top of all of that, that scene and that line from Wrath of Khan has become an internet meme since, for a very long time now, and it is used as sort of to comedic effect in comedy videos as this heightened super melodramatic scream thing. And in that sense, it works really well. But since it's become a meme, it just feels like it's now a reference to that meme in Into Darkness, and it's way too self-knowing and self-referential, and on a spot where it's already really treading the line of being too self-referential by recreating that scene so exactly. That
it's a tough line they're walking, and then they kind of trip over it there.
Yeah. And then they take a flying leap off of that line and into the deep end and just be like, no, fuck it, calm. Because everybody wanted that, I guess.
Yeah. So here's my big question, Sean.
Yes.
How amazing would it have been if this movie ended with Kirk dead?
That would have been
as bold a choice in a blockbuster as I could ever think of.
It would have been, because it would have felt so appropriate to that story of, and the realistic consequences of putting Kirk in that captain's seat before he was ready is that he would die. And because, and then having that be this reboot of that's the big branching off point is Kirk becomes a captain of the Enterprise way before he should have been, and because of that he doesn't get to be the man he should be, and so he dies young. And in knowing who Kirk could have been because of your involvement with the original series would make that so tragic. But then it also puts Spock in this interesting situation where now Spock becomes sort of the Kirk because the early death of his friend sort of balances him more towards the middle and not just towards the logic that would make him a capable captain, because you see Spock actually being a very capable... Spock more is the Kirk of this movie in terms of, coming up with the plans and being able to defeat the enemy.
Yeah, but it would be so interesting to see a third movie where they have Spock as the captain, but he can only be a great captain because he had this experience with this young Jim Kirk.
Yeah, it's it would have made... It's a really great Elseworlds comic book story of, you don't have to worry about the continuity at all. You can just make this one small thing. The problem with it is that movies are way more expensive to make than comic books, so they were never going to obviously take that long shot of...
Yeah.
And then even then, I don't know. While I think this would have been a great ending for this movie, I don't know if they would have been able to make a really good movie without Kirk after this.
I know it would be tough.
Yeah, but it could happen, but I would not expect it to happen.
Yeah,
this would be a great ending to this weird little reboot franchise or something. But yeah.
But it does automatically render some of the stuff after that contrived in a way that it's not horrible or anything. But, it's
you see it in... This is part of the problem is that, because, you have the whole Mickey part where it is established that John Harrison, at the time's blood can bring people back from the dead effectively. And then they have Bones, experimenting on the Tribble earlier. And so, it's that aspect of how your Kirk is going to come back to life is so heavily telegraphed earlier in the movie that it's as soon as Kirk dies, you're just I wonder... Oh, yeah, okay, that's how they're going to do it. It's not even this process of, how the fuck... Because Kirk's not going to die, but you could still be how the fuck are they going to bring Kirk back? It's just how the... Khan's blood, that's just... Yeah, that's...
It's also one of those...
seeded that so early and so obviously, but...
It's also one of those ramifications where you have to wonder, all right, Dr. McCoy now has discovered immortality.
Yeah, that is
a big deal.
Yeah, where... And we've got fucking... there's another problem where because they decide to go after Khan, when you've got 75 fucking torpedoes of these superhuman dudes in your fucking cargo bay, to open one of those suckers up and stick a needle in their arm. There you go.
Yeah.
You have this ready-made factory of immortality. You've got the motherfucking Philosopher's Stone on your hands, so...
They basically do. And then there's another big thing where I'm not a huge fan of the chase that follows, where I really don't like that Khan just destroys half of San Francisco. It's something that feels like it makes it automatically kind of tough to care about what's going on in the Enterprise, especially because they just completely gloss over this. And I understand it's just an action. It's an action scene.
Yeah, I didn't have a problem with it just because it's an action movie.
It's just too much destruction. Really doesn't feel like Star Trek. Maybe that's me, not the movie, but that just doesn't.
I'm going to say right now, this movie does not feel like Star Trek. No Star Trek movies really feel like Star Trek. Star Trek 2 does a lot, but real Star Trek is a TV show. The movies.
I agree, but they have the characters so well in this movie that's all I really need. But it's just one of those things where. That ship going through that and destroying that much just didn't feel... It felt too dark for this movie, that J.J. Abrams usually likes...
It has dark in the fucking title, motherfucker.
I don't give a shit about the title. It's
You
awful.
should have gone in expecting some dark. Because it tells you right now, where are we going? We're trekking into darkness.
This would be one of the most horrible things to ever happen to 23rd century Earth. That's 9/11 times 100.
Yeah. There's funny because we were talking about this, and I said, that like because I relatively recently played the game Vanquish on the PS3. And it was kind of funny because that game opens up with, like, literally in the first 1 minute of the game, the entirety of San Francisco is completely eradicated by crazy space Russians. And so it was like seeing half of San Francisco eradicated by crazy space Hitler. Not a big deal to me. It's like San Franciscans are lucky as far as I'm concerned. No Russians were around. But yeah, I mean, I could kind of see where you're coming from, but it didn't really bug me because it is such just an action movie thing of like, yeah, that happened, but... Since the movie does not try to dwell on it in any way, I guess I'd never really bothered to dwell on it.
Well, I think it's just the kind of moment where you either do it and you dwell on it, or you don't fucking do it. Have him land in the water or something. I mean, it's fine, it's whatever. And the chase that follows...
Just landing in the water doesn't look as cool.
Okay. And I think it's also... I feel like the pace here is a little wonky, where you have... You know, one of the reasons why the Spock death scene is so great in Wrath of Khan is that everything is finished.
Yeah.
There's just no hope. It's all done, and that's the end of the movie. That's how we close it. And we have the funeral. And here, I mean, this is just a small break in the third act, because we have the big scene where the Enterprise is falling to Earth, which is my favorite action scene in the movie. I think it's a really good set piece. I like the idea of the Enterprise just in free fall.
Yeah.
And then having to fix it. I think they have a lot of fun with that. And then having that, and then following up on that with another climactic set piece where it's basically a Tom Cruise. It's Tom Cruise Mission Impossible. Let's just chase the bad guy.
Yeah, I mean, it weirdly reminded me of something sort of like The Dark Knight, where it's like it felt like we had the climactic scene, and then the movie sort of keeps on going, where it's just like, yeah, they could have paced that better, without a doubt.
But, you know, and I still, it's another separation, though, where I think the Spock character stuff there is awesome. I like seeing just how angry Spock gets, and that he almost just fucking kills Khan because of this, and breaks his own codes, and he has to be kind of brought back to reality by Uhura at the end there. And, you know, it's that fight is pretty brutal. I kind of like the moment where he just fucking somehow breaks Khan's arm. That's pretty cool.
So, I mean, he knows crazy Vulcan,
No, I know. I understand how he does it. It's just like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
Tables have turned. So.
Who's breaking bones now, motherfucker?
And that definitely, that's one of the more, having them run through the city and then have them on the, like, the big, like,
on the back of this, like,
that felt like car. That's a Star Wars-y kind of thing to me.
Yeah.
But it's fine. And then, I also thought the movie, after that, ends fairly abruptly, where Kirk gives this speech, and it's really awkward because he tries to tell us that the thing that William Shatner says at the beginning of Star Trek every episode is the captain's, like, it's like the oath you have to take for office. He says that, and then
is that what he says?
Yeah,
I don't remember that specifically.
He says he's giving the big speech, like they're doing the 1 year, the rechristening of the Enterprise.
Yeah.
And he says, when I first became captain of the Enterprise, Admiral Christopher Pike had me recite these words, the captain's oath, and they are, and then he says the words, that's not a captain's oath, that's a description of the 5-year mission. What the fuck are you doing? That was just such a weird cut. Like, I wondered if they had an oath there and that they just decided to, like, wanted to compress that or something. Like, if that speech went on. But yeah, the opening monologue is not a captain's oath.
Yeah. I mean, if you didn't have, like, the 5-year mission part, it could be.
Yeah.
But the 5-year mission part definitely was like, that's a weird oath.
Yeah. He definitely was not made to say that when he was first made captain in Star Trek 09.
Yeah, like, that could be, I don't know, like, if that is, like, a set thing they do that they send people out on 5-year missions, maybe that could be an oath they give before they go on 5-year missions, I don't know, but not a captain's oath.
They also say this is the first of these missions, so... But I like that at the end, you know, we do get set up. It's kind of like the end of Skyfall, where it's like we're back to the beginning now.
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting to see if they do a third movie, how they can do anything within this 5-year mission structure. Like, maybe it would be fun to have them discover a new civilization or something that we know.
Strange new world.
I think you just next time they take the arena episode and have them Kirk fight the Gorn, and that's a whole movie.
Yeah. Although it's, you know, one fucking... It's boldly go where no man has gone before, as far as I'm concerned. Like, fuck you, gender politics. That it sounds better, just phonetically. Boldly go where no man has gone before. It's like it has nothing to do with gender, where it's like man is short for human. It's a better line. And every time it's not that, that's why the fuck TNG.
It bothered me here because he's reciting the William Shatner thing, and then that one word is changed. It's like, that's wrong.
It's always wrong.
Yeah.
God damn it.
Yes. So anyway, I would like to see in the next movie if they do
one small step for a person, one small step for all people.
Yeah, exactly. if they do another movie, I would definitely like to see them just do something completely original. Like, the Khan stuff worked in this movie, but because they have this new canvas of this reboot universe, I would like them to just tell completely original stories from here on out. Because even 09 was very much mired in prior stories and stuff, and some of those elements. And I think they're not completely taking advantage of the possibilities, and I'd like to see more of that, but, we'll see. If there's another one, I think there's a lot of good directions they could go in now.
Yeah.
But
for me personally, I would expect them to set it after the 5-year mission. Like, I wouldn't necessarily expect that's... Because, I don't know, it seems like it would be hard to...
That's such a TV
it would be hard to set a movie story during this 5-year mission, I guess. I mean, they could do it, but that doesn't feel like that would be something you would do.
Right. Let's see.
Because they would be, completely isolated from, all of Starfleet and stuff like that. It would just be weird.
Yeah. Okay, so I thought we should also... We didn't cover some of the side characters and stuff, or even some of the main performances in the movie. So let's talk a little bit about... just start at the beginning. I think the acting in this movie, all of it's really pretty good.
Yeah. Especially Peter Weller.
I think especially Chris Pine. I think I really loved him in Star Trek 09. I think he gives a really interesting performance. I love how much he's able to evoke some of the deeper truths I've always, felt about Kirk without ever imitating William Shatner.
Yeah.
Because, you can't. William Shatner is unique.
That is definitely...
Truer words have never been spoken.
Yeah.
And I think Chris Pine in this movie is even... I actually think all the members of the crew give even better performances here than they did last time around. I just think he has this character down pat. And this is going to sound oxymoronic, but that's kind of why I was interested in him dying at the end, because that had such a big impact.
Yeah.
He would have left such a big hole. And when he died, it felt like he did. He was just so good throughout this movie.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. All the performances I thought were really great.
Yeah, Zachary Quinto was someone who I thought last time... This was also a writing thing. I didn't think they had him... I thought he was really good. Didn't think he was quite perfect as Spock. Didn't have it quite 100% down. And this time, I think the writing, they had him talk a little less like a robot, although there's one line where they have him calculate a percentage. That's a data line. Spock doesn't do that.
And that's also not... You can't...
No.
You can't... That always bugs me when it's like, Captain, I believe we have a 57% chance of success. Dude, on what fucking... what are you talking about? How could you possibly...
Yeah.
You're just making up bullshit. I always hate those lines because it's that makes no shit sense. You couldn't possibly try to calculate a probability out of this fucking chaos theory, motherfucker. Talk to Jeff Goldblum.
Yes. But anyway, so other than that, I think Zachary Quinto, right from when he appears, I just got this sense he's really kind of honed his performance, really, really feels like Spock to me. Again, without hugely imitating Leonard Nimoy, he does not do the eyebrow raise, for instance.
Yeah.
But he finds other ways to really make it feel like this character.
Yeah, no, yeah, and especially the Kirk and Spock relationship, which is sort of the heart of the movie. They both play off of each other really, really well.
They do, and my biggest disappointment on the character side is I know it's tough. McCoy is a tough character to get in the movies, and even the original series movies.
Yeah.
He is never all that prominent. But Carl Urban is so fucking perfect in these movies. Of all the characters, he really... I feel like he most immediately in the first one, and here just feels like DeForest Kelley and that character, and really still while making it his own. And I wish they were able to do more with him here. I feel like they kind of... It's not just that they underuse him. Sometimes I feel like I just don't even get the sense that he and Kirk are best friends in the way they should be.
Although, would they be yet? I don't even know if... it feels like they would need to build that up. I definitely agree that they don't necessarily feel like they are, the bestest of buds, but they also realistically have not known each other that long.
Well, they knew each other all through Starfleet in this series, and so he still has known McCoy much longer than he knew Spock.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that they're best friends. I guess it's I didn't get that sense from those characters, but I didn't necessarily feel like that was something that needed absolutely to be there.
I guess it's something I miss just being invested in those characters, but from the original series, but. It's just something I noticed, and I feel like I thought they had one really, really nice scene on the bridge, and I forget what part of the movie it is, but it's where Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, and they have a conversation that feels like they completely nailed the writing of how you put those three characters in unison and have them argue an issue, and they did it really well, and I think we could have used a little more of that, because this movie is so much about the line between emotion and logic. And I think McCoy is still an important part of that conversation, even though this is very much a movie about the Kirk and Spock sort of sides.
But, because part of the thing is that with that dichotomy, Kirk is so far on the emotion side in this movie. That it's there is no place for Bones to really be there. Like, Bones is not this other sounding board.
Yeah.
He's like, Kirk is occupying that role.
Yeah. But, maybe next movie we meet, Bones' evil twin, and it's all about him.
Dark Bones.
Yes.
Yeah. I definitely agree that I would like to see more of him, but I don't know, like, where or how they would have done that in this movie. And I felt like where he was used, he was great. They had, like... There's like one thing about this whole movie that the aspect of this movie I thought was most improved over Star Trek 2009 is the humor. I thought here felt so much more natural just coming from the characters and the dialogue, whereas in 2009 Star Trek, a lot of the joked stuff felt really forced to me. And, like, kind of weirdly slapsticky in places and just, like, kind of inappropriate and kind of took me out of the movie, whereas here... when you cut to fucking Carl Urban and he's like, "Are you out of your corn-fed mind?"
That's a great line.
That is, fucking awesome.
When he is on screen, they have Bones' dialogue down pat.
Yeah.
And I like that they, in each movie now, of these two, they have given him a great, "I'm a doctor, not a something"
not a
line.
torpedo technician.
Yeah, it's great. And I liked having him be the one who goes and opens the torpedoes on him.
That's a great scene. And then, like, the whole thing with him and Dr. Marcus.
Yeah.
Like, he's... Like, has that whole thing where he's talking about he gave an emergency C-section to a Gorn with octuplets, and boy, do those suckers bite.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
And I was able to enjoy the parts with Bones a lot more the second time. I complained about it in my review, and if I were to go back and revise that, I would probably tone that down. I still think he's a little underused, but when he's there, it really counts. And I think
I felt like he was used a lot better than this one than he was in Star Trek 2009.
I definitely disagree on that, but
it might be part of the thing where I haven't seen that movie in such a long time, but I don't remember his character to be being that much in Star Trek 2009. So it's like it definitely, I don't know. It felt like he gave me a better impression this time around.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I think what they do with Bones here, where when he's there, it counts. We definitely get a sense of how good he is at his job. I think we get a lot of that in the movie. I like that they're able to use it. Particularly the ones I noticed was like Sulu and Chekhov are pretty minor in the movie overall.
Yeah.
But I think their moments count. Like Sulu gets this big moment where just technically giving the con does not make him acting captain, but whatever. He's made acting captain, and he has a nice moment where he intimidates. He does the intimidating line.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Yeah.
And John Cho is definitely someone who I did not get a very good feel for in the last movie of how they were going to play Sulu. And here that's how they always use George Takei, where he's kind of cool, he's kind of badass.
Yeah.
And whenever you cut to him, you just get this sense that he's kind of better than anyone on that ship at his job. He just is super competent.
Yeah.
And if you want something done, he'll get it done. And then Chekhov.
And Chekhov is Chekhov.
They just
lamest, nothing, fuck you character in Star Trek, Chekhov.
I just love that J.J. Abrams and the actor Anton Yelchin just embrace how much of a cartoon he is. You would expect them to tone him down, but they don't in these movies. He is super cheesy. There's the moment where the ship bends and he's running and he falls and he's sliding and he goes ay 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 ay.
Yeah.
I was that's so silly, but it's funny.
Yeah. And I appreciated that because I don't like Chekhov.
Okay.
So making Chekhov this bumbling buffoon, I'm fine.
Okay.
I can be behind that.
And then I think the character I was most surprised with how much I liked what they did with her here was Uhura. I really like that actress Zoe Saldana. I think she's really good in the part. I mean, it's basically a completely different character than in the original series. Yeah. But she kind of works as when she's in a major scene with the other characters, she's kind of the heart and soul of that scene, and I think she plays it really well. And I even was more interested in some of the romance with her and Spock, even though I still do not buy it.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think she did a good job in the movie. But the thing between Uhura and Spock just doesn't make sense.
She's too emotional, and he's a fucking Vulcan. That doesn't make sense.
And Spock would not be in that relationship. He just wouldn't. It's so weird. It's such a bizarre choice that they made to do that, and that they're sticking with it.
Yeah, maybe Star Trek 3 opens with them getting married. We see them having babies. Who knows?
They couldn't because they're two completely different. Then they reach that point where they realize we're two completely different species. This is weirdly kind of fucked up in a way.
I like it.
It's bestiality. Technically, yes.
Maybe that's it. Maybe they just have two. They both have just 6 sex fetishes, and that's why they put up with each other.
It just feels like Oh, like, it's just so weird. Vulcan stuff just like that wouldn't work. It just wouldn't work.
Well, here's the thing. I thought some of like these scenes where they're talking about their relationship were okay. I thought they did good character stuff there. But then there's the scene where she goes in to give him a kiss, and it's so awkward.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense because they can't figure out how Spock would kiss, and their decision there is he'll just stand there.
Yeah.
Well, I think Spock would, if he were going to do that, would probably try to invest himself in it somehow.
Maybe. I don't even... But
that's the problem. It's like
the whole thing is like, they should have this friendship, maybe kind of a close friendship or something, but it being romantic in any way just feels weird. Just like, it just doesn't... Like, it almost feels weirdly like rapey in a way, because Spock is so not invested in Uhura, and he has no idea what to do, and Uhura is just like throwing herself at him. It's just like, what is this? Like, this is so creepy. Stop doing it. Just leave Spock alone, for God's sake.
Yeah. So we already talked about how Simon Pegg is awesome.
Yeah, they give him a lot of stuff to do in this movie. Like, he's sort of outside of the main character, is probably the most important secondary character.
I thought they had one dumb joke with him, which is where he's running through the cargo hold. He's like, I'm running, and they have the long shot.
I kind of, like, I appreciated the joke, but it felt like more like kind of the stuff in 2009 where, like, it didn't feel as natural. Like, it didn't feel like this, like, an organic, funny thing that happened. It was like, they, like, really deliberately just came up with this joke, and it's like this movie can have a lot of funny stuff in it, but it's not a comedy, and you can't just have this, like, joke right there.
Yeah. It didn't, and that scene especially was, pretty heavy. They were about to get destroyed by Admiral RoboCop.
Yeah.
So, in any case, it's all fine. On the technical side of things, we hinted at it at the beginning, but Michael Giacchino's score is back, and I think it's
he's as pun-heavy as always.
Yes. He's a good Star Trek composer. I wish he had done more developing the themes from the first movie here. He doesn't. Pretty underused, and it's not all that interesting, and I think if he returns to score more of these, I'd like to hear him write some more new music for it, but it's still, he definitely gets the energy that the movies need, and it works pretty well.
Yeah.
So, special effects are really good, I think, for the most part.
Definitely.
It's definitely, it's all CGI, but as I said last week, that they clearly are able to make the CGI ships have this sense of weight that works well.
Yeah.
I think some of the CGI creatures they have here and there, like in the first scene, there's that ride that they were going to have, or he says, like...
yeah.
That looked really cheesy, but other than that, it looks pretty good. And I should mention, I did see this movie in 3D, did you?
No.
Okay. The 3D is really, really good, and if you like 3D, that's how you should see the movie, and it's interesting that way. I wouldn't go out of your way to see it that way. I wouldn't go out of your way to see any movie in 3D.
Yeah.
But if you do, it's reportedly a conversion, but it looks like it was shot in 3D. It looks much better than most movies filmed in 3D. And it definitely, the effects, actually, I saw it in 3D once and 2D once, and the effects to me looked even better in 3D. So that was kind of cool. But I was pleasantly surprised, because as you know, I don't usually like 3D, but I will be fair when I see a good one.
All right, then.
All right. I'm not a big fan of the cinematography in the movie. It
wasn't something that I, like noticed at all. Like, it just felt like it's a movie. Like, it didn't feel exceptional or bad.
It's just... It's mostly the shots of just people talking. They go in super, super close up and tight, and have the top and bottom of the person's face cut off, so we really just see from their eyes down to the edge of their lower lip. And it's an awkward framing, and this is a bigger problem for me just with movies today. Most blockbusters are shot in the wide 2.4:1 aspect ratio, and I don't know why, because most directors, J.J. Abrams included, have no fucking idea how to shoot for that aspect ratio. It's what you're ideally supposed to do is that we call that anamorphic framing, because historically it's shot with an anamorphic lens, and when you shoot with an anamorphic lens, it's highly detailed, but it's also difficult to shoot for, and the idea is that you fill every part of the screen with detail. This idea that Star Trek does, and a lot of movies shot in this aspect ratio do now, where you have the face in one half of the frame, and the other half is just blank, that's a new thing, and that looks awful. I never like it when movies do that, and that's a pretty common way of framing today, and I think it's pretty clunky, and this movie does that, but it also has a lot of really awkward close-ups. It looks like it was composed for 1.85:1, 16:9 framing, and just had the tops and bottoms cut off. And J.J. Abrams is historically a TV guy, but I don't remember this being the case in any of his other movies, including Star Trek 09 and Mission Impossible 3. So it was a little weird to me. Not horrible. I think he shoots action very well, Although there's a little shaky cam here and there that I'm not hugely fond of.
I thought it was fine. Like, it was an appropriate amount of shaky cam to me.
Yeah.
Like,
There was a couple of little dialogue scenes where they were doing it that annoyed me. And the action itself, I thought it worked fine. So. And I still like some of the tricks. Like, I think he uses Dutch angles the way you should use Dutch angles, which is to represent disorientation or something. Mm-hmm. There's never just a random Dutch angle in the movie. I think those kinds of things are used well. So, is there anything else major to talk about?
I don't think so. I think that like about covers it. That like, you know, I think definitely the character stuff and how they deal with Kirk and Spock, and especially those being younger versions of those characters, is really interesting. Particularly how they like it culminates in the inverse Wrath of Khan scene and like near the end. I think it's like those performances are so great, and the writing there is so great, and that relationship and that like how those characters develop is so interesting. That it definitely gives this heart to what is otherwise what I would just call an action movie. And it's like and you know, if you go into this looking at it as an action movie, I think you're going to be extremely satisfied because the action's really great, but there is a really strong character arc across it that carries that action. And a lot of action movies today don't always have that heart to it. Mm-hmm. Like it reminds me a lot of the Avengers, honestly. Like, you know, it's got a lot of fun, lighthearted action. Like the acting is great. There's a lot of fun, like natural humor out of it. Then there's a strong character core at the center of it. Yeah.
It's a solid BB plus for me, I'd say. So I liked it.
Yeah.
Not a total highlight of the summer. Spoiler, Fast and Furious 6 is better, but might talk about that next week. Just me. Sean's not going to see it.
Yeah.
But anyway. What else do we want to say?
Fast and Furious Into Darkness?
Yes. I should note, I mean, we joked about this earlier, it definitely feels like J.J. Abrams just desperately wants to make a Star Wars movie. So,
yeah, I mean, it's obvious. Like, these are not slow-paced naval, like, action, like, character pieces, you know, like Star Trek II Wrath of Khan is. They're not that kind of movie, because that kind of movie just wouldn't sell the way they're trying to get these movies to sell.
If he could have given Benedict Cumberbatch and Zachary Quinto lightsabers in that last scene, he totally would have.
Yeah, and that, you know, sure.
Yeah.
Fuck it. I'd go for that.
So does this mean now, though, that because you liked this movie so much, you're excited for Star Wars Episode 7?
No, that doesn't mean that. That doesn't mean that at all.
I know, I'm joking.
Yeah, God.
I think people sometimes misinterpret our disenthusiasm for Star Wars 7 with some sort of hatred of J.J. Abrams. That's not it.
No, that's definitely not true at all. I think J.J. Abrams is a very good director, but the problem, like, the fact that Star Wars Episode 7 exists is one of the core problems with Star Wars Episode 7 at all, so...
Yeah. But we'll talk about that in 2015, if they're able to get it done that fast. Yeah. For now, this is our second podcast this week, hopefully our last one. As we said, if the Xbox event has something just completely crazy, batshit, like, oh my god, to it, we'll do a podcast midweek. Although, I'm pretty busy this week, so I don't know if we'll be able to do that. But if there's an absolute urgent need to, we will. Yeah. Otherwise, we'll be back next Monday. Our main topic will be the Xbox reveal and whatever else comes out in the interim. We might talk about some new movies. Sean has some game stories to tell.
Yeah.
So, that's it for this week.
Yep.
Doctor Who, Star Trek, it's a nerd's dream.
Yep. And, I feel like we can't just end it right here, because I said we're only going to bring it up at the beginning, but... It still needs to be said, Star Trek Into Darkness is a terrible fucking title, and even more so after watching the movie when you realize that title has nothing to do with the movie. No, absolutely nothing at all. So, fuck you, J.J. Abrams, fuck you, Into Darkness.